Hi. So I think these couple videos I'm going to do on Sweden can apply to anyone who's interested in going. But I'm mainly doing it right now because of the San Francisco State students who didn't get to talk to anyone before going, or even those who did, maybe if they want to see more. Because before I went to Sweden, I got to talk to students who studied abroad in Sweden before from the US and also exchange students from Sweden. So I felt really lucky and it really helped the whole experience not be as intimidating or scary. So hopefully I can help with that a little bit in these videos. This video will be more my personal opinions and what I think, tips I'd give, maybe what I wish I had known or stuff I was told that I'm glad I knew, stuff like that. My next video will be actually from the perspective of local Swedes, friends I made there or I've just got to meet over the last couple years, stuff like that. So that may even be more interesting, but I think this is important because I was in your same exact shoes. I'm pretty new to this video making thing, but I try to keep my videos short. I think it's the most interesting. Unfortunately, I can't really imagine I'll be able to keep this one as short as my normal ones. It'll probably go a little longer. So I'll put timestamps in the description covering the different topics, or like so you can click on a different topic if you're more interested in that. I went to Linnaeus University, Kalmar in my time, but I'll be talking more broadly about Sweden in this video. So first off, I applaud you for choosing or considering Sweden. I think it's a great choice. I really had a great time there. I don't think it's one of those choices that's so obvious for everyone, so I think it's pretty cool when people do choose it. When I think of more typical studying abroad choices, I think of like the UK or France or Italy or Australia, where I also went. So I think this is much more unique, and I think that has a certain value to it in itself. I do think there's quite a bit of differences. It's not a scary place to go. It's a very safe country. I mean, with anywhere, you have to keep your wits about you, but it's a pretty nice transition and it's still quite different. So I think that's a really cool combination. I went in fall semester, which is really cool because I got to see the end of summer and the beginning of winter, so the transition of seasons, which is so much different than what I was used to back home. And if you go in the spring semester, it's also cool because you get to see the end of winter and then going into the beginning of summer, basically at the end of it. What was really interesting for me, because I'm from San Diego, I mean, I went to university there in San Francisco, but I'm from San Diego before that. So I never got to experience seasons so intensely. And it's not just the weather change that I noticed. The main thing I really noticed was the people and how they changed from summer to winter. And it's not like the personalities of the actual people changed, but just the activities and how people acted out in public felt much different from summer to winter. In the summer, people are out in the sun as much as they can be. They're out, having picnics or whatever, and just out. It's really cool, almost like too much, where I kind of felt like guilty if I wasn't out in the day. And then in the winter, it's like people are much more cozy in their homes, in the cafes and all this stuff, having coffee. I thought that was really cool to see just a real difference like that. Again, in California, I mean, some parts maybe, but you don't usually notice that kind of stuff. Speaking of cafes and coffee, Fika is something that's really important in Sweden. Fika means coffee, I mean, if you translate it directly, but it really usually signifies more like a break time where you drink coffee and you have like pastries that usually go with that coffee and all that stuff. It's a really big deal there in Sweden and people often do it. It's not usually like a 5-minute thing either. If someone asks you to a fika or if you try to plan a fika, usually it's where you sit down for a while and talk. I think it's a really awesome thing that I try to incorporate in my life back home too. And it's not something you just have to do with Swedes. I mean, you can just do your own fikas with your friends that you make there. If they're international students, that's what I did most of the time. I'm gonna leave a link below, this really funny music video of Fika that they showed us during our orientation there. Another thing that you probably have already heard of or maybe will hear of very soon is like some of the Swedish stereotypes. And I'd say the most typical one you'll hear is that they're very reserved and maybe kind of have these bubbles. There's a funny like picture online of like how Swedish people wait at a bus station, and it's kind of like, or a bus stop, sorry. And it's just like them, like each one like 10 feet apart standing, and that's how they like it better. With any stereotype, I think you can find people or disprove it pretty easily. But overall, as a culture, I think I did notice that a little more. I don't think it's anything too crazy, especially around college and stuff. You meet a lot of friendly people. Also, you'll probably hear that when it comes in like more like nighttime and drinking, they become much more open, kind of like a 180. Like again, with everything, you see that, you don't. I definitely did notice that a few times, but I think you should just find that out on your own. It could be pretty fun. The next thing I want to talk about is being American. And while that might sound kind of weird to talk about, I think it's actually pretty important because, well, there will always be stereotypes with everything, but things are magnified when you come from a country where, you know, decisions that are made sometimes have a global impact. So a lot of people will have opinions, and whether things are for better or for worse just, you know, depends on everyone's individual perspective. So if you think some things are great, you know, someone across the world might think they're pretty awful when it comes to politics. So there's that to keep in mind. And since you come from the US, people will be much more aware. And that's just something to be aware of with wherever you go. I actually plan on making a video on that later. But with that being said, I actually had a really positive feeling from the Swedes towards America. I mean, again, you'll find everything wherever you go. But overall, it felt really positive, and they didn't have much of a negative outlook on us. I'm not going to touch on politics or my opinions or whatever, but I will say I went there the year after Trump got elected, so it was kind of more of a controversial time, I suppose. But overall, I was really impressed with how people could distinguish, you know, politics from the individual, whether they agreed with it or not. I was also surprised how many people actually knew so much about our politics, more than I did many times. Not just Swedes, but international students in general, which I think is pretty incredible and impressive. I think it's easy to feel like, oh wow, we're so important, everyone knows about us. But I really think it's more like a reflection of ignorance, that I didn't know more about their countries and who, you know, was in charge and all that stuff. So I try to work on that more now. So overall, I had really pretty positive feelings and never any problems. So that was really great. One thing I did notice, and people did actually tell me beforehand, is that you'll notice with Sweden and some of these like Northern European countries, is that they see a lot of times our greetings as kind of fake. You might have heard about this already, but you know, in America, we tend to say, especially around friends, like, hey, what's up? Or how's it going? Good, thanks. And you? Good. You know, that's like a typical conversation, like when you're passing by someone or just see someone outside of class. And the reality of it is that nothing was really accomplished in this conversation. I mean, you're not actually asking how that's going. You're not really asking what's up with their life, or even if you say how's life, you're not really usually asking how's their life going. And you know, I think we see it something more as just showing you care a little more than just saying hi. It's kind of like just give me a little more time out of your day to say talk to someone, but you're not really asking how's it going. In many other countries, like in Sweden, a lot of times this isn't really that common. And so if you ask someone how's it going or how's life or what's up today or whatever, it'll be a lot weirder for them or kind of throw them off. Maybe because they think you're actually asking how their life is going. So you could either get like an actual detailed response, which you're not really looking for, or just a weird look and maybe feel a bit awkward about the whole thing. Again, overall, I think they know this about us and that we kind of talk more like that. But I did notice it's a bit more uncommon, and they tend to make fun of us for it because they think it's kind of fake. And I don't mean to use they so much to generalize a whole country, because obviously you have individuals and they differ. But maybe just keep in mind, if you're like at a coffee shop and you're waiting for your order and you ask the barista, you know, how's your day been? You know, how's everything going? You know, before you ask that, maybe keep in mind that it's like a little less common and it'd be a little more weird. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is money and Swedish money. They use the krona there, which is unique. It's the Swedish krona. So even if you go to Denmark, where they also use something like the krona, it doesn't work there. And obviously in the rest of Europe, you know, where they use the euro, you can't use the Swedish currency. The one thing I will say is that the exchange rate is really good right now for the US. I think it's 10-1. And when I was there, I think it was more like 12-1. So the value is better, and also the math is easier. I mean, it's kind of hard to divide everything by 12, trying to figure out how much you're actually spending. So 10's a lot easier. But just to keep in mind, Sweden does tend to be quite expensive. It's not as expensive as Norway maybe, but it is an expensive country, and normal things will probably cost a little more than you're used to. So those are my top things that I had written down that I think is important for people who are going to Sweden to know. My next video, again, will be from the perspective of actual local Swedes. So I think that's also pretty important, what they think we should know before we go there. Hopefully I was able to help. If you have any personal questions, I leave my email below in the description. And yeah, I hope you have a great time.